Now you're welcome to Psych 121, Introduction to Psychology. And this week, as we round off, we're going to be taking principles of learning. I love this topic so much because I want to know how we learn. I'm so in fact, it's one of my passions. I just want to know how human beings learn and how can we enhance learning. So I don't know about you, but I'm very interested in this topic. And that is why we have a whole course devoted to it. We have a whole course devoted to the subject of learning. We call it psychology of learning. There's a whole course devoted to it. I don't know whether you have taken it or you're going to take it later on. So for those who have not taken any course on learning, this is a very good intro for you. Now, those psychologists often posit that learning is a permanent change in behavior as a result of experience. It will, however, be clearer to submit that, and this is my own definition, that learning is a positive, so I'm the one adding the positive dimension to it. Of course, you can learn negative things, you can learn positive things, but I'm one of those school of thought that believe that if your learning is not positive and destructive, it's not a true learning, as it were. So learning is a positive and progressive change in behavior. It's not always instant, it's actually progressive. So those two keywords are important to me. It's a permanent, and so this is my adapted definition of learning. So if you go, mostly you see most definitions just simply saying learning is a permanent change in behavior. That's what you will see mostly all over the place. But I'm the one that I felt after some years of meditation on this definition of learning, I proceed to write that we need to put this caveat that the learning should be positive and it's progressive change in behavior as a result of impingement of stimuli. I need to make it clearer. What is affecting that change in behavior? It comes back to the model I've always been sharing with you, that 3-tier model: stimulus, mental processing, and response. Response is the behavior. So that model keeps coming back to explain human behavior. And that includes learning, so that I need to bring that in again so that you have a clearer picture of what is happening at a goal. Those stimulus, like my voice coming to you now, all the things you have been hearing over the past weeks now in this course, if you have been internalizing and digesting them and you get to a level of understanding that before you realize it will begin to affect a change in your behavior. Maybe you have a particular way of, like the perception I shared with you last week, or yes, maybe you have a particular negative way of perceiving things. Consciously, unconsciously, some of you might have started changing your perception. And then you now begin to apply what we call gesture psychology, having holistic picture. You now begin to train yourself to have holistic picture of events so that you can be more balanced in your perception and then your behavior at the end of the day. So you don't now begin to exhibit abnormal behavior because of abnormal perception. I hope you are seeing this change. So, and that is part of what learning. So that change in I do that a lot. That change, the moment you a stimulus enter into you, you process the information, you've accumulated it and then assimilated it into part of your repertoire of knowledge. And then it's now affecting a change in your behavior. Maybe that's a particular way, maybe you used to get angry. And then suddenly because of this some certain information, like maybe you just contacted the scripture that says anger rests in the bosom of fools. And that one hits you so bad that you don't want to be in the class of fools. So you now begin to work on yourself to change that behavior of getting angry soon. That to me is learning. That actually is a summary of what learning is all about. And that is what I'm trying to define or articulate in this definition. So it's a positive learning, it's a positive and progressive change in behavior as a result of impingement. We can even stop this lecture at this point, because if you can just get this explanation, you've really understood the concept of learning. You just got it. So as a result of impingement of stimuli, the correct information, of course. And I'm going to put the caveat how negative learning can also occur when you allow negative stimulus to keep entering into you. By watching negative things like pornography, or listening to negative friends that are full of negative stimuli, and they're always telling you about how the fling they had with their friends. So if you continue listening to such garbage, before you realize it, you would begin to desire to do the same. That is why you've got to be careful the kind of stimuli you are allowed to enter into you per time, because that actually is the genesis of learning, of what we effect on elicit change in behavior. I've seen this happen in a jiffy, in a split of second. At one embassy I went, two toddlers were playing. One was, in fact, definitely we can notice that I could perceive that one particular one was from a very, maybe unruly environment as it were, and the other one was cultured. But suddenly I just noticed the toddler that was prone to negative behavior, drooping saliva down the place, pulling people close and just playing dirty, started affecting the one that was cultured before, and he started copying the negative one. So it's like negative behavior seems to have greater impact, or negative stimuli seem to have a stronger effect on people than positive ones. Maybe we need to do more research on that and begin to realize that, because we were just sitting there waiting I was just sitting waiting for my passport to come out, from the offices, and within few minutes I was just observing and saw this toddler with a positive behavior being influenced by that toddler that was exhibiting negative behavior. Within split of minutes, within minutes. And that is the same thing that extends to, adolescence, even adulthood. We influence one another. And so you've got to be careful the kind of stimuli you are exposing yourself to. And all these things, culminate into change in behavior. And that could be positive or negative. So let me quickly recap my definition of learning again. Generally speaking, learning is just simply submitted as permanent change in behavior. But I'm actually adding this to it, saying learning is a positive and progressive change in behavior as a result of the impingement of stimuli, that is, stimuli you can just regard them as general information, on the nervous system and information processing by the brain. You can see again that three-tier model in this particular definition. And I hope with all the illustration and examples I've given you, you already understand this. And then another very important point you need to take note, of course, still talking about the stimuli. Of course, I've explained this severally and during the alpha semester, but there's nothing wrong in repeating, because I always say it, repetition is a powerful tool for learning. In fact, the more you repeat information, the more it's likely to become, you've established a pathway in your neural system that will now create the movement of information from short-term memory bank to the long-term memory bank. Rehearsal, repetitions, they are powerful tools for learning. And that's the essence of taking good notes, so that it will give you opportunity or making recordings of lectures like this. So as you repeat again and again, you listen to such, lectures again and again, and then you listen intelligently, you are bound to learn more than possible. You just listen to such lectures once and did not take time to repeat it again and again. I'm telling you the truth. The person will have an edge by all means. And so that is the essence of this. So the stimuli that are, because I'm saying this against the background of the fact that I've already taught you this before, but there's nothing wrong in going over it again. So the stimuli we're talking about here are barrages of information or data coming likely from the external environment, but it can also be from the internal environment, like pain in any part of your internal organ. So that's what the stimuli is all about. Then, so what are the contexts? What's the context of or elements, and what are the contexts and elements of learning? Under what platform do we learn? What are those key elements of learning that will provoke learning? Number one, I want to believe is what I call the teacher. And my definition of teacher is not limited to human being. Again, in the course of my few years on the earth now, I'm beginning to realize that the word teacher is actually a generic word that can stand for, of course, we are all familiar with human beings like myself. Now talking to you, you see me as a teacher. But you see, your internet, your friends, for instance, and siblings can be also your teacher. Your parents are your number one teachers to start with. Of course, these are still in the category of human beings. But text materials, books you read, can also constitute teaching elements. They are also teachers in quote. Information from the internet, videos that you watch can also constitute teachers in quote. So you need to understand anywhere, any source that is stimuli is emanating and coming across to you that can eventually elicit a change in your behavior, they constitute teachers. I just want you to have this generic understanding of the concept of teacher and teaching. And don't narrow it to just one human being who is standing in front of you talking like I'm doing now. That is very important. So because those are the sources, as it were. Then fellow students can also constitute the source of this information. So I'm just trying to explore the various figures that could constitute sources of learning for us. So teacher, the student, the parents, which are all forms of teachers, as it were. Then learning materials and teaching aids. That's actually what I'm talking about. So in fact, you can just summarize all these elements I'm putting across to you as teachers. As teacher, yeah, but let's now split it into specifics. And that is why we can now say the teacher, that the commonly assumed concept of teacher or teaching, then the student, then parents, then learning materials and teaching aids. There are so many of them all around. Like even this kind of chart you are seeing in front of you is a device that is programmed to enhance your learning. It's making the concept easier at a glance. On the page, you can see all the various elements or factors or figures that contribute to your learning. That's what I'm trying to show on this slide. And of course, the evaluation and the feedback we give you, they also promote or enhance learning. The learning environment itself, if it's comfortable, there's air conditioner, for instance, or at least fan, and the weather is cool, you're more likely to learn than when the environment is very harsh and noisy, and so on and so forth. So all these, they are part of the context and elements of learning that can affect learning. That's what I'm trying to make you to quickly understand at this point. So with this understanding, it's now imperative on you, if you want to enhance your learning, so it's now imperative on you to make sure that all these various elements, they are actually inclined positively to enhancing your learning and not the other way around. Like if you notice your environment is noisy, like somebody now did not mute the microphone and we can hear the noise from the street. Now I will know some people may not be able to read in that kind of environment. Some want it quiet. So in such a case, you have to adjust yourself maybe to begin to read in the night when everybody's asleep and there's less movement in your street, and then you can learn more. So those are kind of things you need to understand yourself and your nature so that you know what will enhance your learning. That's why we are sharing all this. In fact, this particular lesson we're having has it's supposed to be applied. It's not just for exam, it's something you need for life. Then the kind of society you are can also determine whether it will encourage learning or not. If you're in an environment where they're so finicky about money and they don't care you get it, you may find, like some statistics have just been conducted now in certain part of Nigeria now, they discover that it is more of the female from that environment that are actually attending university, and the male are no longer attending university. And further research now show that the male there, they prefer to go and generate money and sponsor their wives to go to school. I'm not talking about the Eastern Nigeria. Researchers are beginning to confirm that. And this has apparently to do with the desire for money. So this is a kind of scenario, that kind of environment, if you're not careful now, and the male are not being seriously encouraged to study, to go for education because they're not seeing it as a quick source of money. So they prefer now to send their partners to money. Of course, there are consequences for that, because some of these people eventually, when become educated, they now begin to look down on the man and then prefer a professor and somebody who is equally more learned, and could eventually create a lot of problems. So we need more researchers along this area, whether it's actually a smart decision for them to be sponsoring, and then while they go for business and looking for money. I'm just giving an example. So these are some of the scenarios you need to understand, the dynamics of learning. And then the last one there, the administration or administrative setup. You see, the way the administration is so critical to learning, if like in this kind of environment you are, if the administration is not handling some vital elements of learning properly, they are not handling the teachers correctly, they are not handling the environment correctly, all the materials and infrastructure you need for learning are not in place, it will affect learning. The practical materials are not there, it will affect learning. That is where the administration, they are very relevant. But I have good news for you. You should not be even limited by all these negativities. You should be able to think out of the box and still be able to learn, even in the midst of the most, situation that is the most negative ambience of learning. You can still learn, because you can see. That's why you need to read biographies of those who have been able to actually engage in learning, despite all the negative context. Now, context of learning again. This is another dimension you need to quickly capture. Things like noise, which I've mentioned in part, poor lighting, lack of electricity, which may also affect now your ability to connect to the internet, security threats, poor or lack of food, which has to do with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you're hungry, most of the time you don't have food to eat, you'll be able to concentrate to learn well. If you're an adult, maybe you can still manage, but especially for younger ones, it has greater effect. Those basic needs, you don't have money. I've encountered some students, even here in CU, being given just 5,000 per month. I've seen one with 2,000 per month, and a girl for that matter. How do you expect such to learn? And of course, the person had a lot of psychological challenges and had to come for counseling. So these are some of the situations that we need to be conscious of and find a way to address them so that we can learn maximally. This is very critical. There are more examples here. Then we also have offensive gases, poison or offensive gases, excessive heat, shabby or unhealthy environment with foul smell is enough to just cause distraction and not allow you to concentrate the way you should. Natural disasters like earthquake, war, and so on and so forth, including the Ebola virus now. Coronavirus, see the way it has disrupted our learning system. These are examples of context of learning from the environment that can affect learning generally. And then unpeaceful environment where there's war. So these are examples. So we need to factor all this in. When you say some group of people are not learning, you need to check some of these factors, including some negative cultural practices, like what you call Boko Haram is an attack on academia. Boko Haram, for instance, it's an attack on it. They just dislike Western education, and they are discouraging. And that was why they went to that particular school where they don't expect girls to go to school. That was why they carted away all those girls in the north that time. In fact, many of them are still not found today. It's because it's an attack, first of all, on academia before the now is turning into religious war. In fact, the meaning of Boko Haram and land is actually a war against Western education. And that's why, are we correct? Am I correct?
Sir, I think so.
Exactly. Yes. So these are some of the scenarios that we have on our hands, and we need to find a way to, if you want to enhance learning, you have to be conscious of all these factors and know how to eliminate it in the life of your student. That's where counseling comes in, and it's still the work of psychologists again. As psychologists, we need to understand all this and then know how to eliminate all these destructive elements that can disturb learning so that the student can learn optimally. That's our duty as psychologists and counselors. And this is very important. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Now, the change in reaction or behavior is elicited via the processing of stimuli by the nervous system, particularly the brain. Now, it depends on the way your brain processes the information before learning can take place. You can have two people listening to the same information, and one after 2 or 3 weeks or 2 or 3 hours or days, the person is able to change. The other one is not changing. Instead of even changing positively, it's even becoming more hardened. Why is it so? Of course, I hope by now you can give me answers to this. There are genetic factors. There are also environmental factors like peer group the person belongs to. Like if the person belongs to a cult, for instance, and compare with somebody who has just given his life to Christ and is baptized in the Holy Ghost and moved and is now under more conscious, of God and imbibing the fear of God. The response to the information both of them receive per time will be different. So we need to be conscious of all these. And that will affect the way you process information. Some will get the same information and instantly they will just throw it away. But some will now take time to meditate and you begin to see them shedding tears because the thing is now emotionally affecting them and they make up their mind to change. So those are the kind of scenarios. So the state of the experience you've had in time past or in recent times can also affect the way you respond to certain stimuli or information coming to you that's supposed to affect a change in behavior. So that's what I'm trying to say here. Now, stimulus is often under the control of teachers or which I prefer to call them learning facilitators, while mental processing and responses, which is the behavior, are under the control of learners. But I want to quickly let you know, so you need to be conscious of this, the control, I think I need to also, I should have even started with pathway of learning inside this kind of lecture, but I've shared that with you severally, beginning with general information, to the level of knowledge, accumulation of knowledge. When you understand information, you begin to accumulate a repertoire of knowledge. And when you have deeper understanding of that knowledge, you can now apply it to create solutions. And that's the level of wisdom. And that's very critical. So, and that is actually the ultimate goal of learning and education itself. So we become, assets to our families, to our communities, and to our nations, becoming solution providers. And you are now able to come up with solutions to the various challenges in the system. That's when you have actually learned. That is actually the evidence of education and learning, by my own standard. And of course, I want to believe by United Nations standard, if you look at all the sustainable development goals, they are also actually, focused on this same point I'm sharing with you. So that's true learning. Learning for peace, learning for progress, advancement, sustainable development, that we improve the standard of living of human beings. And that is the essence. So, but I don't want you to keep on passing the buck and putting the blame on teachers that's why you're not learning. With or without teachers, you can control your learning with the advent of information explosion now and information on the internet. In fact, there's nothing you want to learn you won't get on YouTube, for instance. And for every topic, you have almost more than 100 good teachers on the YouTube to teach you, including the so-called, abstract statistics. There's no subject. Just Google it there. You will find it. So you don't have an excuse not to learn. You don't have it at all. So, like I said, your teachers are not limited to the teachers, your lecturers in the university or in the classroom. You have teachers in various forms, the books, the materials, the videos, and so on and so forth. They all represent your teachers. So once you have this understanding, you discover that you are no longer limited. You can as well say, you can actually restructure the statement to say you are in control of your learning, totally, 100%. You are totally in control. You may argue with me, you may not want to agree with me, but I'm telling you, you are totally responsible for the outcome of your life. Whether you end up in first class or third class, it's your responsibility. You can't start blaming any lecturer. The same class now, for instance, 100 level for psychology, you all started at the same time. By the end of first semester, we're already seeing 12 first class out of a class of almost 37, 38. The difference is becoming clear. It's the input that determines the output. We have less than 10 minutes. So I'll begin because I still want to give you, maybe you disagree with me. I really want contribution and responses from you, how you are receiving this, how you're understanding this. So you can note down your questions and then I will give you the last 5 minutes to contributions, or maybe you differ on some points I'm sharing, you don't agree with me. I will be ready to even hear you actually, because knowledge is not actually limited. Nobody's a repository of knowledge. But these are my not only personal views that have been tested over time. That's what I've been sharing with you. So what makes for good teachers? This, but I want to emphasize what makes for good learners more. But you can see quite a number. I will not take labor to explain all this. Subject mastery is very critical for a sound teacher, very important. Then you have good human relations, sound communication. If I start blowing grammar here now, many of you will no longer concentrate on what I'm speaking now. You just be laughing and be taking notes and be marking me somewhere. We have had some teachers when we were in secondary school and other platforms. You don't no longer listen to them. You are also, in fact, you just be distracted with the error, mistake in communication. It's not pronouncing the word correctly, or it's not speaking, it's just mutilating the grammatical principles and laws. You start laughing. You don't concentrate again. So it affects learning. And so I'm just tempted to start this because I think I should skip fast now. Then, another point you need, as to teaching method, there's various techniques of teaching. The one I'm using now is the poorest method, I must confess to you, just talking to you. The real one, the best learning technique is you doing it yourself. Doing it, practical. That's the best any day. Then, other points we have here is, to form, what do I have here? Class control. Firm class control is very important, especially when you're within a class. But when it's online, it's a different ball game altogether. Time management, critical. Or the teacher should be original and creative and innovative. ICT compliance. And I hope you have all completed the evaluation form. I hope you didn't mark me down. I hope you didn't mark me down.
No, sir.
Oh, that's good. So, okay then. So but it's actually both ways. That's what life is. We evaluate you, you also evaluate us. But it's good for you to be constructive and impartial about it. I'm very frank. So, and that is very good. So let me pause on these because I'll quickly go to the other dimensions. I still want to say that a prudent and self-motivated student can also create a learning stimulus for himself or herself. I think I've explained this severally, so I don't need to belabor it. And that is the point I'm making about you are absolutely responsible for the outcome of your life. So you have greater control over your learning experience. You have greater control. So what are the traits of high-flying students? Passion for reading and study, good listening skill, good questioning technique. I still find this, I think most of you, I don't know why, especially with this online teaching, even in class. Is it because you don't want your classmate to laugh at you? I've discovered that students who ask questions, they are almost more intelligent than those who don't ask questions. Even our Master Jesus in the scripture was listening to the doctors of the law, and he was asking them questions. No wonder. The Bible now said he grew in wisdom and in favor with God and with men. So asking questions is critical. It's so critical. So I don't understand why you become timid when we give you opportunity to ask questions. I want to see a change. It's a good, powerful learning tool, and it's a trait of good, high-flying students. Then you also pay attention. They pay attention to details. Like I'm talking now, they'll be capturing the points that are not on the slides. They will go the extra mile to learn more about the concept of learning. They listen and they put that, incorporate that. By the time you now ask them to discuss something, their responses will always be richer than the students who are just lazy and just concentrating on the PowerPoint we gave them in class. The difference will be clear. I've read some students' responses, I feel like giving them a score beyond 100. I've seen, in fact, I had to photocopy their work because I was just so excited with some of them. I hope you enter into that category. It's not for lazy bones. Just watching film and carousing and chatting all over the place, spending hours on useless things. You don't learn that way. So that is that. I don't know. I think, let me see how many more points we have here because we have just about 3 minutes left. Okay. Maybe, and I'm not sure it's still quite, the slides remaining there, there's still quite much. I'm going to pause here and allow you. I'm not too sure whether we still have opportunity for lecture next week, like I've said. But quickly, let me hear your response to how far we've gone now, because I don't want to shut down without you saying something.